the destruction of Tanis. Now, Tanis is an archaeological site in Egypt where there are huge monoliths, ruins, and rock formations that were destroyed in some kind of cataclysm in the ancient past. As you will soon see, we think we know exactly what happened in Tanis long ago to destroy the place. But we have something more. We have the test of two theories, both of which can be applied in differing situations. A scholar who I have long admired is Professor Robert M. Schoch. Now, he is a professor at Boston University, and he has long advocated a theory that past civilizations may have ended as a result of solar activity. Essentially, situations in which coronal mass ejections cause the sun to spew forth enormous bolts of energy that have the power to destroy human life, and in particular, to create such heat that rock is crystallized or vitrified. Now, he has found many situations in which ancient civilization artifacts show evidence of being exposed to extreme heat, resulting in rock vitrification. My admiration for Professor Robert Schoch is based on his display of academic courage in challenging mainstream ideas in archaeology and human history with very novel thinking. The basic fact that supports his hypothesis is that coronal mass ejections, or CMAs, actually do occur. We often call these things Carrington events, and relatively minor ones have the potential to destroy much or all electrical activity on Earth. Now, the last time our planet experienced a significant Carrington event was back in early September 1859. At that time, our use of electricity was limited to things like telegraph communications with Morse code. But things are different now. Our current civilization is based on modern technology that depends on electricity, and if we were hit with a coronal mass ejection of the magnitude of the one that hit Earth back in 1859, we might be pummeled back into a very primitive state, technologically speaking, and it would take a great many years to recover.
All right, so yeah, some sort of energetics, and it's pointed downwards at the base surface, and then everything just starts to melt. Everything just like, it looks like it's liquefying everything here.
But that 1859 Carrington event was minor relative to the ones that Robert Schoch talks about. And it is true that really big ones can and do happen. So his hypothesis that such events are the cause of major solar activity that sends bolts of energy to the Earth's surface that can potentially vitrify rock or essentially turn the surface of rock into glass, it's a possibility worth considering. Now, Robert Schoch is not a big fan of the extraterrestrial hypothesis. He focuses on major Earth changes that result from solar activity, not ancient aliens. However, our research here at Farsight has focused heavily on the activities of extraterrestrials over many thousands of years, so we do consider the ancient aliens hypothesis to be a viable cause of civilization collapse. So what we have with this project is a direct test of the two hypotheses using remote viewing, as it is done under very defensible scientific conditions here at Farsight. I am Courtney Brown, director of Farsight, where we studied the perceptual process known as remote viewing. Remote viewing is a mental process that is done using highly structured methodologies that are derived from those developed by the United States military and used for espionage purposes. But Farsight is civilian, and we use remote viewing for scientific experiments and for exploration. This new project conducted at Farsight employs remote viewers who are among the most experienced and highly trained viewers existing today. The remote viewers all describe much the same thing, all corroborating reports, and it is worth emphasizing that the remote viewing was done totally blind, and none of the remote viewers communicated with one another about the project during the data collection phase. Even their final presentations were recorded on video with no one else in the room. This is not science fiction told through riveting remote viewing, conducted under defensible, clean scientific conditions. This is as real as it gets.
Type of, bonfire, you got a sort of a thing going. It builds that energy, whatever that energy would mean to you. It builds that energy more and more, and it affects the collective minds of all the people participating in it. And they get even crazier and more manic and more ferocious as the night goes on.
Now, at Farsight, we know that the extraterrestrials exist. And we even show people how to make video recordings on demand of their ships using specialized cameras that can shoot at 120 frames per second and in infrared. We have done this countless times, and we have published many examples of this. So we take the extraterrestrial hypothesis very seriously with respect to civilization changes and even their collapse. Now, a common feature of both theories is that extreme heat is often a factor in both the solar activity and extraterrestrial activity. With solar activity, the extreme heat obviously is associated with very large coronal mass ejections that get focused through the atmosphere to produce its devastating effects. But with the extraterrestrial hypothesis, we have war, or extraterrestrial bombardment of terrestrial locations using powerful energy weapons. Now, both hypotheses, the solar activity and the extraterrestrial weapons bombardment, would produce archaeological evidence that would look very similar, and it would include the vitrification of rock, essentially melting the surfaces of rock. The big difference between the two hypotheses would be that with the solar activity hypothesis, the effects should be randomly scattered across the planet, whereas the extraterrestrial bombardment hypothesis would have the effects more targeted to specific locations on Earth where there are past civilizations. And this brings us to the current project, the destruction of Tanis. Tanis is an archaeological location where there are ruins of a past civilization. It is located in the delta region of the Nile River in Egypt.
I believe I'm omitting explosion. I believe I have omitted explosion somewhere down the line a few times. It's like the subjects are pushed or blown back.
There once were great stone buildings at Tanis with columns and statues. Archaeologists have been digging up the remnants of this site for quite a while, and there are two things that are striking about what they have found. The first is that the ruins really are ruins. Almost nothing is intact. It looks like everything was blown up, obliterated, smashed. Now, this appears to be much more than simply wind or water erosion damage. And the second oddity is that many of the pieces of the ruins show evidence of being exposed to extreme heat or rock vitrification. So now we have a puzzle. What caused all the destruction and the extreme heat at Tanis? Was it a coronal mass ejection, or was it an extraterrestrial bombardment? Through our many projects at Farsight, including our project on the Great Pyramid of Giza, extraterrestrials, who we at Farsight call the bad ETs, have been involved in human civilization for a very long time, and it has not been pretty. The slave civilization that existed back in the ancient pyramid building days of Egypt was how they liked to run things back then, with the extraterrestrials themselves running this planet by manipulating humanity like puppets on a string. The planet was run like a prison, and indeed, that is exactly what it was, and in many respects, still is. But a time arrived when other extraterrestrials, who we at Farsight like to call the good ETs, arrived who didn't like what those prison ETs were doing, and this resulted in a series of military conflicts, Star Wars-type shootouts. Now, the prison ETs adapted by running the planet indirectly behind the scenes and through intermediaries, and indeed, that is where we are today. Humanity is more free than in the past, but not really free. The tension between the two ET camps continues through today. Now, Tanis offers us an unusual, nice opportunity to test what happened to destroy the civilization that existed at that location. Was it a solar event, or was it an extraterrestrial bombardment?
It's like, at this moment, this just feels like an act of destruction, destroying what's here. But later down the line, I see there's a focus on like control.
We're going to find out right now, so hang on tight. Now, all remote viewing projects have a target. The target for this project is quite simple. It is the most significant and major event that destroyed the location now known as Tanis in ancient Egypt. Now, the goal of the project is to determine the cause of the destruction of Tanis. Now, since we do not know what destroyed Tanis going into this project, the target remains quite general. We rely on the capabilities of the remote viewers to sort things out once they start perceiving the general target, and that is exactly what they did, as you will now see. We have 4 remote viewing sessions for you today. This is an important application of remote viewing with an interesting archaeological twist, a test of two theories with respect to a particular location. It may be that in some locations around the planet, the theories of Robert Schoch may be correct, and coronal mass ejections end up destroying stuff. But in other locations, the extraterrestrial bombardment theory may be correct. Now, with respect to a particular location that contains lots of archaeological evidence, we can test both theories using a novel methodology conducted under pristine conditions. Everyone can learn a lot by watching these sessions, all conducted totally blind by the remote viewers, and all sessions containing corroborating information for each condition. This is amazing stuff. We begin with a session by Intisam, and then Aziz Brown, Yeme Genet, and then Shantae. And after you see all of the sessions, I will return to help pull things together.